Hi, I'm Professor Hitch, and today I want to talk to you about comma splices. In fact, that should be what you're seeing on the screen right now. A comma splice, as defined on the paper on the screen right now, is also called a run-on. Sometimes you may see your sentence marked as a run-on, but in fact it's actually a comma splice or vice versa. And this occurs when a writer has connected two main clauses with only a comma. The main clause provides a complete thought, so the reader should not find a wimpy comma struggling to join the two powerful clauses. This is the error in effect right here. The main clause, comma, the main clause. But here's an example of what it looks like on a practical basis. Fanning the slice of pizza with a napkin, Jolene waited for it to cool. She had already burned the roof of her mouth with the fried cheese sticks. That's a problem. There's too much information going on. But how do I know that? Well, the first thing I do is I identify the subjects, right? So if I need to find a main clause is the subject, verb, and idea. So I identify the subject, start making some comments, subject, and I see another one over here, subject. I see a verb. I see a large verb phrase. Okay. Some of you who are watching me do this video might wonder why I completely skipped this. This is like a modifying clause. It's modifying Jolene waited for it to cool. How did she do that? How did she wait? Well, she did it fanning the slice of pizza with a napkin. It's not a complete thought by itself. However, Jolene waited, subject, verb, for its cool, complete thought. She had already burned, subject, verb, the roof of her mouth with the fried cheese sticks. That's another complete thought. That makes this whole thing, let's see, mark it up a little more. That makes this whole thing one main clause, and that makes this another main clause. So why is this even a problem? Some of you might be looking at this and saying, well, it's just the grammar's like mostly fine other than this comma splice thing. What's the issue here? Well, the issue is that the comma isn't telling a complete story. Fanning the slice of pizza with a napkin, Jolene waited for it to cool. Because she already burned the roof of her mouth? So, watch what happens when I add different conjunctions into the mix here. This isn't even a conjunction, but this is perhaps the most obvious way of reading the sentence. She's waiting for it to cool, fanning it with her napkin because she already burned the roof of her mouth. Not a conjunction, but actually that makes sense. That's how most of us are reading it. But what happens when I use fanboys and I decide I'm going to add maybe like a so? Well, that doesn't quite make sense, but it does change the meaning from because. And has a slightly different meaning. But has a slightly different meaning. And while I'm going through this fast, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is this. When you only have the comma, it doesn't actually tell you how those ideas are connected, and that's what makes it wrong not to have the comma conjunction there. Or, as you'll see in a moment, one of the other fixes available to comma splices. So with that in mind, that a comma splice is a main clause, comma, main clause, how do you fix them? Well, the first thing you can do is add a period, as was done here, and then capitalize the next letter, essentially starting a new sentence. You can add a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So because is not a conjunction, but for is, that's the first part of fanboys. And that would fix what's going on here. You can add a semicolon. And a semicolon would be appropriate here. You use semicolons to connect main clauses together. And then finally, you do some kind of subordination, a subordinate conjunction. Something like, she waited it for cool since she had already burned the roof with her mouth. Essentially, what all these four suggestions have in common is that you fix the sentence by clarifying the connection. In the case of a period, you're saying there is no connection. Stop reading into my sentences. With a comma conjunction, or with a semicolon, you're saying here is a little more information about how my sentence is connected. These are four ways you can fix a comma splice. All are equally valid. It simply depends on the nature of your sentence. So to review, a comma splice is main clause, comma, main clause. I personally identify comma splices most quickly by looking for the comma in a sentence, checking to see if there's a main clause after, comma subject verb. Once I've confirmed there's a comma subject verb, then I go back and I look for yet another subject verb combination. If I found two in a row, then I found myself a main clause, aka comma splice. There are four ways to fix this: breaking up the sentence with a period, adding a coordinating conjunction, adding a semicolon, or adding a subordinate conjunction. And there you go. We are at the end of this review for what is a comma splice. I know I went through that pretty fast, but hopefully if you're able to review this maybe more than once, you should start to get the gist of what you're looking for and how to fix it. So good luck.